What do we have here? So this is the rear right caliper from my 2016 Mazda 3. So this video I'm going to show how one would disassemble and rebuild this caliper. The reason why I attempted to rebuild this was a while back I noticed my brake fluid was low. So through investigations I saw that the boot that surrounds the piston had a hole in it. Now, I don't believe that's where the leak was, but regardless, that needed to be replaced because you can introduce junk and crud into the caliper, which can cause damage. So luckily, on the same caliper, I found that this rear seal fluid was leaking out of there every time I operated the handbrake. So that was my intent, although it didn't work out. So this project was unsuccessful for myself. I ended up just buying a new caliper and putting that on. I have a video on that if you'd like to see it, but I figured I would still put this together, show people how all these mechanisms kind of come apart and get put back together. I don't know if I would advise someone to do this unless, you have experience. Brakes, when it comes to brakes, it's serious business. Just keep that in mind, be careful. And if you're gonna do this on a day where you have lots of time. These little mechanisms, I was surprised how much shit was in the caliper and the piston itself, but these mechanisms are very finicky to take apart and put back together. So just give yourself lots of time and be patient, and let's get into it. So this is what I used, and this is what worked for me. You may find that there are better tools or different tools that get the job done. These are just the tools to disassemble and reassemble the caliper itself. If you want to take it off the car, which I assume you do, and put it back on, there's a few extra tools, but it's pretty basic stuff. But in general, we got sockets, ratchet. We have a caliper piston compression tool attachment. Now you don't have to use that. I have used in the past just needle nose pliers. It fits in the grooves of the piston. If you're unaware at this point, the rear brakes have the emergency brake, and it adds a bunch of complexity, but essentially instead of just compressing the piston in or out, you have to spin it. We have a bunch of flathead screwdrivers, picks, wire brush, wire wheel, snap ring, pliers. I ended up using this guy. But for 2016 Mazda 3, you can get away with a standard pair or a pair like this. This is just with the interchangeable heads. That's only for 2016 Mazda 3. The reason why I bought this pair was I thought there was going to be a snap ring deep down inside the actual caliper. And this is really the only tool that fits. Now, there was no snap ring in here. There's only a snap ring in the piston, which I'll get into. If you're working on a 2016 Mazda 3, either style of these snap ring pliers will work. We have our rebuild kit, which has all the new O-rings, seals, boots, all that fun stuff. Some copper crush washers for the brake hose. Now the manual states anytime you are taking off the brake hose, you should replace the crush washer. So it's probably a good idea you do so. The actual sizing for these crush washers is 10 millimeter inside diameter and 16 millimeter outside diameter. And you may or may not need a new brake bleeder screw. We have some standard brake grease, silicone ceramic, and flashlight will be very handy. For me, to compress all those springs and doodads, just a deep socket of any size. Brake clean, degreaser. Enough of this, let's start tearing things apart. So here we have it. Now, on YouTube, I found a few caliper rebuild or rear caliper rebuild videos, but nothing for a Mazda 3. So I'm flying blind a little bit. The rear brakes have the emergency brake. I don't actually know how this thing works because when it comes out, comes in straight, but to push it back, you have to spin it. So I'm interested to take a look, take this thing apart. But anyways, if we keep pumping this, we should be able to get that piston out. You can see the tear there. We'll see if any gunk got in there. I think because it wasn't leaking, The seal inside is still good, so hopefully debris and whatnot didn't get in the caliper itself, which would kind of suck. So the piston actually looks pretty nice. And to get the piston off just the last little bit, you grab your little specialty tool, turn counterclockwise, and that should release it. This should just pop out. Yep, okay. There we go. And there's our piston, and it looks just beautiful. Just absolutely splendid. Look at that, other than the face, but we can clean that up. So let's try and get this boot off. So this boot has like a metal ring embedded in it just to give it some reinforcement. So the trick was getting kind of in behind there and loosening it up just around the edges. In the videos I was watching, they made it look so simple, but it took a little finesse, took a little time. Now let's take a better look at this guy. It appears to match up. I think we're gonna be in luck, ladies and gentlemen. There is another seal in here. Hopefully it doesn't give me as much issues, or not another seal. There is a seal. That was the boot. So that just pops out. That was easy. Okay. So now that those seals are out, I want to try and tackle this back brake mechanism and this bolt. Okay, so that turns. Oh, not bad. Not as seized on as I thought it was going to be. Now this should come off, but I don't imagine it's going to come easily. You know, I'm just going to play around with this, use some force, use some leverage, and just keep working it. There it is. It's kind of loose now. Okay. If you're doing this, take pictures or film it just so you remember how to get things back. Okay, now there's this little mount. I'm not sure if I need to take that off though. I may want to just to clean it, but I'm afraid I'll break these bolts or something. Ah, fuck. Whoopsies. So this is what I was talking about before I fucked up. Long story short, I attempted to extract the bolts. I probably spent about half an hour trying to do it and ended up cracking the caliper itself. I still want to show you guys how to disassemble this caliper and rebuild it, so I'm going to do that. Yeah, I ended up just abandoning the project and buying a new caliper. So let's just continue on. Don't tell anyone about the broken bolt, and yeah, enjoy. But another thing, I took the bleeder screw out. There's so much pitting around here. Like, I don't know if you can see that, but like, it's like just disintegrated. It's wild. Continuing on, you can get a better view here of the crack. So next is removing this boot. This should come up pretty easy. Oh, yeah, just lifts right up. Okay. So there's a little collar here. That little collar came out very easy for me, but you may have to put the nut back on and give the stud a few whacks just to loosen it up. Now, in the YouTube videos I was watching, there's supposed to be a snap ring in there, but there is not a snap ring in there. So here you can see a better view of that clip, that retainer clip of sorts. There's little ear things that I believe I need to kind of scoot over, and that will release it. It's really hard to do and not put my head under the camera, but I think if we... Oh, you know what? There's a spring. Oops. There's a spring in here. All right. So I'm gonna use a socket and see if I can compress it. Yeah, it does go down. And the trick here is, as you're pushing down, grab a screwdriver and fold that ear in so it releases from the groove from the caliper. Ooh, okay. That popped out, or one side at least. So that's the trick. Compress down and fold in these little ears. So that was in a groove in the caliper. Let's take this apart. Okay. Oh, we have a washer. Oh, whole thing came out. So this is a bearing thing. There is a difference on each side. I don't know if it matters. I think it was like this, but just be very careful when you're doing this. Now, luckily for me, this caliper is trash, but for you, I would advise just be very cognizant of taking it apart. There's a little O-ring down there I'll need to pull out. And then we have, oops, this contraption. So here's the mechanism. Honestly, I still don't fully understand how it works. So when you pull the emergency brake, you twist that and this goes in and out. So that makes sense. You know, snugs up on the rotor, not too much. So let's say it's fully kind of retracted, brand new brakes, you know, your piston's all the way depressed. As your brakes wear, this comes out, but it doesn't spin out. And then I know when, you know, you change your brakes, let's say the piston's out here, you have to compress and twist, and that's what retracts the piston. But how does it get back out without spinning? Because if it spun, that would fuck up the pads. There's little dimples in the pads, or a little dimple that aligns with this. So I don't know, that's a mystery. This is, maybe I'm missing something? As I mentioned, there's a little O-ring in there, and I think that's actually what has failed and allowed fluid to leak out. Because that's the only seal. It looks fine. So let's compare it to the new one. Doesn't look like the old one's squished or anything, so I don't know why it was leaking, but we'll replace it. All right, now that this is completely disassembled, it would be time to clean it. Wire brush, some degreaser, a bunch of brake clean. So I don't know if you can see that, and I mentioned it around the bleeder valve there, that this caliper itself is just kind of falling apart. So like this, if this is happening to you, honestly, I don't think it would be safe to reuse it. Like I don't know why it's doing that. Maybe it's just the high heat, and maybe these things just have a lifespan, right? It's been 10 years. Just be careful. We got that cleaned up as much as I'm gonna clean it up. I took it outside and gave it a good spray down with brake clean. So now that it's clean, you really want to inspect inside and make sure that there's no gouging or damage or anything like that. So mine, the inside looks fine. Now, piston. Oh, there's a spring in there too. Interesting. So maybe this will solve my mystery. Okay, so snap ring. Okay, there's that little threaded mechanism. Some washer, a washer, another little bearing thing. Why is there so much? Yeah, there's a lot of contraption in here. Wasn't expecting that. There's some gunk down in there. Oh, it's grease for the O-ring. The O-ring, which is right here. So you're gonna want to give this a nice little clean down as well, and a little inspection. This looks fine. Well, let's take a look at my kit here. So that's the seal of the caliper. That's the caliper and piston boot. We have a little bleeder cap, I believe. Okay, we have the rear seal. We got a square looking O-ring, which I believe belongs to that. And then we have another O-ring, which I showed you earlier, and a new snap ring. I want to try to get this O-ring off. There we go. Oh, that went flying. Let's start rebuilding. I want to grease up this top O-ring. I definitely want to grease it up because there was grease in there. And now, you know, you can see I changed my cardboard. This is officially a clean zone. We don't want all that crap getting into our caliper. So this O-ring, this had an orientation, these little groove things down. So let's see how I can get this on. It should go on easier than it came off. Good. So for the grease, I'm just using standard brake grease. It's rubber friendly, brake friendly. Now we gotta start putting this back. So I believe that goes in there. Oh yeah. I'm curious as to why there's an O-ring in there and like what's it trying to seal. Now there was this shit. Bearing first, then washer. So that slides down on there. Bing, bang, boom. Got your little springy. Get that in there. Okay, now, fuck. We have a spring that we have to compress and then get the snap ring on. I have no idea how I'm going to do that. That's going to be challenging, man. Wonder if that socket trick will work again. When I put the socket in, it pushes the O-ring too far out and it doesn't get past those little grooves because it's pretty tight. Tight. Oh. So I was messing with this over and over and over again. I think it took me like 10 minutes to finally figure it out. But yeah, screwdriver and the pliers. Come on. Oh, oh my God. Oh my God. Did that go in? Oh, fuck yeah. You just gotta, as I've said before, you just gotta keep fucking with it. Okay, so for the caliper, this doodad goes in there. Then we have the bearing, which may be upside down, may not be. It's impossible to say. Then a washer. Then this thing slides in that pocket there. We have a spring. I don't think it matters which way is up, or at least I hope not. And then this thing that goes on and clips, I guess, in here. Oh, that's tough. These springs are tough, man. So it's got to sit in there, and then I think when it'll be loaded, you can slide it down in the caliper. Don't forget my O-ring. And then maybe you jostle it down a little bit and it'll spring out and catch. So I've been messing around with this a bunch, and I think I gotta go back to my trusty socket. We'll start on the back end since you can't see it. So let's see if we can press that down. Okay, that's in. Okay, so I'm gonna push this all the way down, or try to. That's a little, fuck, it's moving in the vise. You fucker. So if I push this all the way down, it should slip in. Yeah, okay. Is it gonna explode? Woo! Is the other side in? Yes, okay. So don't put your face in front of it because it might let loose and take a fucking eye out. Okay. So hopefully now you can see how those ears kind of slip in there. Now it's just barely hanging on. So let's try and do this quick. Just want to put a little lube on that O-ring down here. Okay, so that's greased up. So there's a little groove and then a little hole, so those need to match up. And I keep forgetting that I gotta be careful because this thing's fucking loaded. Okay. Like a firearm. Oh, okay. So I just want to make sure that that's seated in the hole. Yeah. Okay, so that's seated in the hole. So now, I think, I put that in there, get a little extra leverage, and push down, it should just snap in. Oh. Okay, it's not blown out. Oh my God, they're both in. That was, truth be told, honestly, I was playing around with it a lot off camera. Took me a long time to figure out that method, but it seems to work. The most challenging thing about this was when I loaded that up, you need to make sure that those ears are perfectly aligned with the slots. If they're not, and when you push down, they won't expand and catch that little groove in the caliper. So that was the biggest thing. That is in. Okay, there's a little collar here that goes back on. I think that's just friction fit. All right, now seals. Again, I don't know, I was watching a few different videos. Some people just use the brake fluid as lube. For this seal specifically, I think brake fluid is the proper choice here. So I would not use the brake grease on this seal, but for the other two O-rings, and when you're putting in the boots, I think brake grease is appropriate. My only concern with using brake grease on this seal is that it would mix with the brake fluid, which probably isn't great. Okay, we got it. Now this boot. I think this is gonna be one of the harder ones. In some of the videos I was watching, they recommended putting the boot on the piston first and then putting in the caliper, where others were saying put it in the caliper and then slide the piston in after. I'm gonna try placing it on the piston first. Okay. Man, so fucking annoying. Because it's so greasy because I greased it up. It's just slipping around. So, rewind time, I would fit this on dry. Yeah, I wouldn't grease it up yet anyways. And then after I would put some grease on just to help seal it. Okay, that wasn't terrible. Okay, so we're gonna slide it down, try and get it down to the bottom without coming off. Some looby. And once that's in, you're just gonna wanna work it around the whole circumference. I used a little cold chisel. And just press it in, make sure it's fully sealed. Oh, oh man, I was so worried about that. That was gonna be the worst part. So this turns clockwise to tighten. As I'm tightening it, the boot is going to seat itself. Look at that. One thing to note, I should have put a little extra grease on that top groove where the boot seats on the piston. Okay. So that's in the vertical orientation, which is what you want. So the dimple on the brake pad will align in there. I backed the caliper out most of the way, not all the way, because I didn't want it to pop out. Just to make sure that the boot was seated correctly, and it was, so then I tightened it back down. From here, we're gonna get this last little seal on. Yeah, I think that's fine. At this point, you would get your bracket on. This isn't clean, but ideally you would clean it. Let's see if that works. Piston's not moving out. Did I just fuck something up? So putting this on, the orientation is important. So I've just kind of put a temporary bolt in there just for a stop. You want to put this on so basically on the neutral position, it's against this stop or close to it. Mine was just kind of like a little bit off for whatever reason. I don't know if it's supposed to be tight. And then you're going to want to tighten that down. I don't know what the torques are. Just get it nice and snug. There's, You gotta have to like friction fit it onto that shaft there. And that's what stops, that's what kind of connects it. Now when I operate this thing, the piston comes out. Before it wasn't. So I've been playing around, investigating a little bit, just out of curiosity. And I think I've determined how this cursed contraption actually works. So we'll start off with the piston. So there was an O-ring in there, and I have noticed now that there's a little hole in there. And I believe what that is for is, when this is all assembled, there's high pressure in the caliper, the brake fluid pushes out. And if you recall, there's a spring in there. But that allows this to kind of move in and out. And the seal was up in there. So I believe this is to allow air, just because it's basically a vacuum, allow air in and out when the spring is compressed through the braking fluid. So it pushes onto the pads and clamps the rotor. Now for the crazy mystery of how this thing comes out straight when the brake pads wear is actually quite simple. So this, if you recall, there was a bearing mechanism in here. So this, the piston spins independently. So what I gather is when there's enough pressure and as the brake pads wear, this will be forced out. And this will spin independently and just kind of loosen itself without having to turn the actual piston. And when this is assembled, there's enough friction with the seal itself, but then even more friction when the pads are in here and everything's in contact, that when you pull the handbrake and or depress the brakes, this will come out. If you can see that, will come out. But because this can't spin or is limited to spinning, that independent threaded mechanism in the piston will spin. So that's what allows the piston to come out straight without turning. Not sure if anyone cares about that, but it was interesting to me and it was honestly bugging me. I had to figure it out. So I believe mystery solved. So that's how you rebuild one of these crazy contraptions. Now, broken bolt aside, I would not reuse this caliper. As I discussed, it's kind of disintegrating. Now, if this happened again on another caliper, I don't know, I might give it a shot. I might give it another shot. But it's just so much easier to replace the caliper and probably a lot safer. I'll leave that decision to you. But anyways, that's it. I hope you learned something and take care.